Hey everyone, welcome to A Serious Like, and today we're going to be discussing the differences between the INFP personality type and the INFJ personality type. This is actually a remake of one of the older videos I did on this channel a few years ago that I thought wasn't as good as it could have been. That one wasn't one of my favorite of the differences videos I did, so I thought it was about time to remake that now that I have a lot more education and experience with these personality types. Let's get into it. I'm going to talk more about this at the end of the video so I don't waste your time, but this channel recently just got a new affiliate partner, which is Bones Coffee, a coffee company that I've been personally buying from for more than 2 years. I reached out to them to see if they'd want to work with this channel because I like their brand and I like their coffee. So if you'd like to support this channel, maybe by buying some coffee, stick around to the end of the video and hear more about that. Back to the video. So INFPs and INFJs, these are some of the two most common mistyped types, which is to say that a lot of people who are INFPs will test as INFJ sometime, and a lot of people who are INFJ will test as INFP sometime. And this is very easy to see why. They only have a one-letter difference in the two types, the J and the P. But that J and the P reverses nearly everything when we look at the underlying cognitive functions of the personality type, and has a huge difference in how these two personality types play out. So I'm going to go into detail on these cognitive functions and how these two types differ in their presentation and in their personality. So the single most important thing to remember when you're looking at an introverted type, so any type that starts with an I, is that the J and the P at the end of the personality type represents the second function for that type, not the lead function. So for example, the INFP is an extroverted perceiving type, whereas the INFJ is an extroverted judging type. But that extroverted perceiving or extroverted judging function is the second function in the function stack, opposite to the introverted function next to it, which is the dominant function. So for example, the INFP has a secondary extroverted perceiving function, which is intuition, but they have a dominant and first introverted judging function, which is feeling, which is to say that the INFP, despite being a P type, is actually a judging dominant type, introverted feeling, which is a judging function. The INFJ, on the other hand, has an extroverted judging function, feeling, which is secondary to their dominant introverted perceiving function, intuition, which is to say that the INFJ is a dominant perceiving type despite being a J type. With that, let's look at the cognitive functions for both of these types so we can see and differentiate what they are. So the INFP has dominant introverted feeling, secondary extroverted intuition, tertiary introverted sensing, and repressed or fourth extroverted thinking. The INFJ, on the other hand, has dominant introverted intuition, secondary extroverted feeling, tertiary introverted thinking, and repressed or fourth extroverted sensing. Now, the most important thing to note when you look at the cognitive functions between these two types is that they are completely different. All four of them are opposite. And what that means is that they're going to be very different in how they approach the world and how they interact with things. Now, both being NF types and INF types are going to have this value and draw towards people and towards society and things for the betterment of people, but the way in which they go about this and how they approach these different situations is going to be entirely different because of their cognitive functions. Let's start by talking about the INFP. The INFP leads with that introverted feeling function, and feeling, which is a judging function, is actually what Jung called a rational function. And rational functions are functions that like to make decisions using some form of logical basis, either related to pure logic with thinking or value-based logic related to feeling. And people tend to forget this because they think of feeling as being not logical, but the logic functions, the rational functions essentially, are functions that use a logical process in some way or another. Whether or not it's related to absolute thinking or values is the difference. So the introverted feeling dominant type, like the INFP, is going to be one that leads with value-based rationality, which is to say they like to make decisions related to things that are important to them from their values. This essentially means that the introverted feeling type likes to have internal, introverted decisions made regarding things related to ethics, morality, and perception of the self. Introverted feeling types are exceptionally authentic. They're going to be the types who you are not going to have to wonder if they're being authentic with you or others. They come off as purely themselves because they can't even bear the idea of pretending to be something they're not to fit in with others. Now, this is also going to lead these types to be kind of brash because despite the fact that they're extroverted perceiving types, they have that P at the end of the type, they're going to be very strong-willed when it comes to those introverted feeling, values that are associated with them. Whatever they decide is either right or wrong from that value standpoint is going to be something that they are going to stand up for. And that's very important for the introverted feeling dominant types. If they believe that you are doing something wrong, they are going to probably tell you, and you are not going to have to worry whether or not they think you are doing something incorrect or wrong, because they will most likely just come out, say it. They might even get frustrated with you if you're doing something that they perceive to be wrong from a moral, value-based standpoint. Let's contrast the dominant function of the INFP, which is introverted feeling, with the dominant function of the INFJ, which is introverted intuition. So again, the INFJ, despite being a J type, is actually a perceiving dominant type. And what this means is that INFJs, instead of wanting to have some sort of decision related to morals or ethics, prefer to leave things in a more open standpoint and view them and process them internally. Introverted perceiving types, so introverted intuition and introverted sensing, like to take in information and process it slowly. It takes them longer to come to decisions, but once they've come to those decisions, they're usually going to be very adamant about their stances towards them. Now, the introverted intuitive types tend to be more quiet and reserved compared to the introverted judging dominant types. Also, because INFJs do not have that introverted feeling function in their function stack, they're going to be much more comfortable being able to kind of mesh and fit in with others at the expense of maybe their own even identity a little bit. This isn't to say that they're inauthentic, it's saying that they're willing to meet in the middle of the bridge when it comes to differences between people. Whereas introverted feeling dominant types like the INFP are so attached to their identity and authenticity that it can be hard for them to even take a step onto that bridge. Introverted intuition as a function for the INFJs is often going to cause them to be very much inside their own head. As I said, they're going to be even more withdrawn on average than the INFP personality type because they have an introverted perceiving dominant function, which causes them to almost experience life almost as if it's a movie going on inside of their head at the expense of experiencing life directly for what it is. So essentially, they are kind of taking what is happening in life, bringing it into their mind, and viewing it on a little projector almost. They're having their own subjective interpretation of events compared to what they know and the concepts related to what they know. Now, this differs from that introverted feeling dominant function of the INFP because the INFP, on the other hand, is going to be making some sort of value judgment first when they come to new information. They're going to decide, is this right or wrong, as quickly as they can because it's an inner must for them to have that kind of decision. The INFJ, on the other hand, wants to play that little internal movie inside their head and really think about what it is, how this is impacting them, how it's impacting other people, and then they might come to a decision on it if they have enough time. This isn't going to mean that they're always going to be strongly decided on the things that they perceive internally, but they are going to prefer and need to have that time to process information before they come to value judgments. Now let's move on to the secondary functions of each of these types, which is kind of the reversed for the other one. So INFPs have secondary extroverted intuition compared to the INFJs who have dominant introverted intuition, and INFJs have secondary extroverted feeling, whereas the INFP has dominant or first introverted feeling. So the INFP with secondary extroverted intuition is often going to cause them to be far more expressive than the INFJ. The INFP is going to want to express that inner authenticity. If you see people when you're out and about who are very comfortable wearing clothing that makes them stand out and they don't care if they're seen as odd or strange, there's a good chance that that person is a introverted feeling type. When you look at somebody who might be from Gothic subculture or any other subculture who wears clothing that's not normal to the norm, they are likely going to be very comfortable with that introverted feeling function. This isn't to say that extroverted feeling types can't do this, but on average, the introverted feeling types are far more comfortable being expressive with this internal sense of authenticity, especially if they're an FP type, introverted feeling with top 2 extroverted perceiving. And this is because extroverted intuition as an extroverted perceiving function is just going to be more expressive than an extroverted judging function. When a person with extroverted perceiving has some sort of creative thought, especially if they're an extroverted intuitive, they want to share this and express this with the outer world. They are comfortable expressing their abstract concepts with everyone around them. Whereas this is not going to be the case with the INFJ who has introverted intuition. When the introverted intuitive dominant type has a creative thought or process, especially something that's related to their inner daydreams, they're not likely going to be able to share this with people unless they feel that they know these people very personally and well and they can trust them with that internal information. The INFP, on the other hand, is again going to want to share that kind of information. Now, the INFJ has extroverted feeling as their secondary function, and opposing to the introverted feeling of the INFJ is going to be able to, again, meet in the middle ground when it comes to differences. Extroverted feelings types want to find that social harmony. That's the most important aspect of the extroverted feeling function, is kind of finding that middle ground in social situations and being able to connect with others as easily as possible. The INFJs are going to come off as very warm and open to others despite being a very private and reclusive type. Now let's talk about the tertiary function for each of these types. The INFP has tertiary introverted sensing, while the INFJ has tertiary introverted thinking. Now the tertiary function is one that is hard to differentiate within people because it's often something related to how mature they are and where they are in life and how far they've developed this particular function. Which is to say that two INFPs could have entirely different levels of maturity with their tertiary introverted sensing that's going to cause them to have two entirely different value systems associated with this function. Let's talk about the common traits that might be found in each of these types with this tertiary function though. So, INFPs have tertiary introverted sensing, and introverted sensing is a cognitive function associated most often with a comfort and familiarity with things that have been experienced in the sensory world, which is to say that things that are subjectively important to them in the sensory world. This is why you often find that INFPs like to maybe collect things that are important to them. They like to rewatch movies. They have a strong sense of value for their family. They might enjoy things like photos, because photos bring them back to a certain time in their life and in their mind. And this is how the introverted sensing function is likely to present itself in the INFP. This is going to be strongly related to that dominant introverted feeling function, and a lot of their identity is going to come from a place of introverted sensing, the things that are important to them internally from that subjective sensory experience. On the other hand, INFJs have tertiary introverted thinking. Introverted thinking is a function associated with wanting to internalize and take in information for the sake of understanding and knowing rather than for the sake of application and use like you would find with extroverted thinking. Which is to say that INFJs are often going to be the types of people who like to read for the sake of reading, understand for the sake of understanding, and just kind of interact with information out of curiosity rather than seeking out information to use it. I like to compare and contrast introverted thinking and extroverted thinking by using the analogy of a car with an engine. The extroverted thinking type wants to get in the car and drive to the destination. The introverted thinking type, on the other hand, wants to pop the hood of the car, look at the engine, see how it works, understand the underlying aspects of it, and this comes at the expense of getting to the destination on time. These two things kind of conflict with each other, and you're going to see this a little bit when I talk about extroverted thinking next in the INFP. So finally, we're going to talk about the repressed or fourth functions for each of these types. The INFP has repressed extroverted thinking, which, as I mentioned a moment ago in the car analogy, is the ability to get in the car and get to a destination on time when it comes to logic and things of that nature. Now, the INFP is not going to want to do this. They're going to value their introverted feeling over their extroverted thinking because extroverted thinking is repressed and introverted feeling is dominant. Which is to say that INFPs are going to be uncomfortable getting into the car and driving where they need to go in terms of business, things of that nature, if it comes at the expense of their own authentic self. Now, this can be a problem for many INFPs because it means they're not going to be able to willingly put themselves into a job that may be beneficial for their life, say, for example, if it isn't reflective of who they are as a person. They're not going to be able and willing to do things that they need to do in life at the expense of that reflection of the self. And this is one of the reasons that INFPs, unfortunately, tend to struggle in the business world because they are unwilling to give up that authentic self for the sake of advancement in things like jobs and promotions and positions. Now, INFJs have repressed extroverted sensing, and repressed extroverted sensing often presents itself in an ignorance of the sensory world, so the immediate world around them, as well as an ignorance of their own bodily existence and the things that they need to do to take care of their own body. So INFJs might struggle with daily hygiene and care routines. They might struggle with keeping their house in order if they get into a bad mental state, things of that nature. Now, INFPs are also going to struggle with some things like that occasionally, of course, but INFJs are usually going to struggle with just general sensory maintenance, keeping track of the world around them in the physical sense. They're also going to struggle highly with paying attention to details. It's very likely that they're going to overlook things when they're working on some sort of project or something that they're working with if they're working too fast. Introverted intuition is a very fast function that wants to get to the goal as quick as possible. Now, this is a problem because they're going to be, again, likely to overlook the details if they're trying too hard to get to that destination, and they're not taking the time to take in all of the things related to them and the thing that they're working on. So those are the primary differences between the INFP and the INFJ personality types, cognitive functions, and how those influence their decisions. When you look at the types from an overarching standpoint, you can see that the INFP is going to be someone who has strong value judgments, and they are going to live and die by those judgments. It's very important for them to live by their authentic self. They want to express that fully, and they're going to stand up for the things that they believe in very strongly. Now, the INFJ, on the other hand, is also going to be someone who's going to have that need to stand up for injustices, but they prefer to do so in a more diplomatic way. They want to find that middle ground with other people, and it's important for them to find the best solution for everybody involved, even if they don't entirely agree with the opposing side. INFJs are more of a diplomatic type compared to the INFP, which tends to be a type that's going to stand up strongly against things that are injustices to them or go against their value system. So I just want to take a minute now of your time to talk about my new affiliate partner here on the channel, Bones Coffee. Now, Bones Coffee is not a sponsor for this channel. They're an affiliate partner, which means that if you buy anything through them through my link, that I get a small portion of that cut, and you'd be supporting me and this channel. Now, Bones Coffee is a company that I have legitimately been buying for more than 2 years. I am someone who drinks coffee daily, and I like flavorful and interesting coffees. Now, you can see here that I've got some of the flavors here of Bones Coffee. I've got High Voltage, which is a high caffeine coffee that they make, and they've got flavors like French toast, and you can see they all have that interesting little theme with the skeletons and the bones on them, and it's just a coffee company that I've enjoyed for a few years now, and I thought I would share with you. I wanted to have a partner for this channel that is something that I could actually endorse, so if you'd like to buy something that would support me and this channel, that's something that I genuinely believe is a good product. I promise from my very introverted feeling little heart that it's something that I actually use and consume, then you should consider heading over to Bones Coffee through the link down in the description box below. Alright everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on the INFP and INFJ personality type. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know down in the comment section below, or if you think there's any differences that I forgot to mention or you think that are important, please include those down in the comment section below as well. I would like to remind everybody that I do have personality typing sessions available on my website, asurasite.com, if you're interested in working with me to find out what your personality type is and what that means for you. This has been Asura at Asura Psych. Have a good one.